Hi, how's everybody doing? Exciting to be here. So this is very ambitious. Over the next 20 minutes, this is a lightning talk. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to cover roughly a half century of computing, but we'll try to go as fast as possible. So we'll start off and we're going to try to end with AI. So we'll start and end with AI. So first of all, show of hands, anybody recognize any of these logos up on the screen right now? Show of hands, anybody? Okay. I mean, this is definitely a SaaS conference, so I would imagine so. These are products that have represented the best of what SaaS has offered us over the last 15, 20 years. And obviously, this is how we went from spreadsheets sitting on our local computers to software that could run in the cloud native, with the scale, the safety, the speed of cloud behind us, right? To give us auditability, transparency, scalability, security. And that's been a great journey. And what I call that SaaS 1.0. But there's a flip side of it. And the flip side is that we have now gotten to a place where all of these disparate tools have created their own rigid schemas that define at the department level what good looks like. So they have these schemas, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a ticket, whether it's an incident, perhaps it's an event or a case. Each of these respective department tools have created their own terminology, their own glossary. And that glossary comes to really define how we use these products and how we do our daily jobs. And there's something about that that actually gives us an opportunity to think further, to say, how would AI revisit this? If we were to look at where we go from here, from SaaS 1.0 to SaaS 2.0, what would it look like? And so, again, as I promised, I want to start stepping back and saying, well, how have the greats over the generations of computing that we've come to see, how have they tackled this problem? So a couple of logos up there, obviously you probably recognize them. What have they done so incredibly well? Well, first thing what they did was they catered to the builders. They created the right separation of concerns so that there were a lot of problems that could be solved at scale so that developers and great minds, entrepreneurs, could do great things on top of the platform that was built. And this was great because if you remember, before the cloud really came to be, there were a lot of people that were reading books about client-server architectures and JSON and APIs and saying, you know what, I can do that. I can do that at home, I can do that at the workplace. And I'm going to start setting that up. You set up a Linux server, before you know it, you've got an IT closet full of servers and racks, and it's serving real use cases. Maybe you're handling transactions online. But at some point you realize that you got to do security patches, and you got to do security updates, and you've got to do deployments, and you got to have zero downtime, and you got to make sure that the hard drives are still working. And this became a problem, and that's where a lot of these tools started to come together, and they started to create the right abstractions for us to do a great job. And so it's similar to what we're starting to see here as well. What we're seeing is the fact that everything starts to look really easy to begin with, okay? So I want to start off by saying, look, I got this LLM at my disposal. And this LLM is obviously exceedingly easy to use conversationally. And it can do some really great things. It can classify, cluster, prioritize, summarize, synthesize. It can do all of these things. And I could put this to work to solve real problems. I can solve real problems towards specific conversations, specific tickets, and down the list. And I can do this. But what happens is you can start to increasingly get to a place where you get back to that really messy IT closet. And we've started to see this in the market now. You're starting to see situations, you got headlines like this. I don't know, show of hands, people who actually saw the story, maybe heard of the story. Companies that went out and said, you know what, we're going to stop using humans to do problem A, problem B, problem C. We've got this covered. We're going to do it using agents. It's that simple. But it wasn't really that simple, was it? And 6 months later, it's a new headline. Same company, new headline. No, actually, we're going to need those humans again. And so a little bit of this has been happening. And why is that? And it's because we have to really start to understand what are the right abstractions and where are the areas of opportunity and what are those separation of concerns. And of course, as we figure that out, we're starting to see headlines like this where MIT reports, and I know many of you have probably seen this on your LinkedIn feeds and so on, where we talk about 95% of these pilots failing. What does that really mean? And I think what it means among other things, is the fact that you not only need a frontier model layer, but you need to really think about the data layer. You need to think about how the data becomes accessible and in whose hands. So access provisioning makes sense. You have to start to think about replication. You have to start to think about data sanitization. And that's just the data layer. You got to think on top of that about provisioning, auditability, agents and workflows, repeatability. You have to start to think about end-to-end use cases. How do you serve real use cases in customer success, customer support, field sales, development productivity, project management? These are real problems. And until and unless you're willing to not just think about the data layer and build a prototype on top of it, when you get ready to actually look at the data layer and the operational layer and the application layer, that's when you're ready for production. And so it's a journey. So we have to think about that and say, well, where are we headed? The reality is there's such tremendous momentum because people believe that there's a huge opportunity here with AI, particularly agentic AI, particularly conversational AI. And so money's already being spent. I'm sure some of you go back to your workplaces and you see your leadership asking you, how are you taking advantage of AI? And money's being spent. Holdbacks, budget being shifted from headcount, perhaps over to making decisions around buying tools or AI products and saying, how are we becoming more productive? How are we reducing customer effort or employee effort? How are we improving customer satisfaction? These are real questions that are being asked. And we have to figure out how we get to answers that really help us in the long term. And so I'm going to take us further back from cloud and say, well, how did we get started with computers? 5 decades ago, 6 decades ago, when we had those behemoths sitting in our workspaces, workstations, mainframes, how did we get to where we are today? And the reality is we started off, it was expensive, it was onerous, and it wasn't really easy to figure out how this all makes sense. But we figured it out. We decided that to go big, we had to go small. We had to create an operational system, an operating system. And we had to start to figure out how to build more programs on top of it, build work groups, and make things shareable, and make things more use case driven, and create a user experience. And so that was our ticket to the kind of expansion that we saw in the decades to follow. So if we start to think about that and say, well, what does that teach us? What it teaches us is that if we build the right paradigm, you can have tremendous purpose by thinking about the hardest problems by building on top of those paradigms. And that's what we've done. We got more productive, more efficient, we got more creative. And that's the huge opportunity that's existed, not just when the mainframes came to becoming workstations for us, but then when the desktop came out, when cloud came out, and again here with AI, that's the same opportunity that we have. It's an opportunity for us to define the operating system and then to figure out how we use and develop that to become more productive, efficient, and more creative. And so how do we bring that computer mindset to AI? How do we bring an operating system to the forefront here? So let's just think about it and say, what would it look like? What would the dream computer look like? The dream computer would be able to take all your critical data and all your critical integrations and bring them to your most important surfaces. That would be the computer that you'd want. It would be a computer that did not create false boundaries between your opportunities and your incidents, or your tasks and your sessions, or your issues and your cases and your events. It would really understand and respect all of it. And it wouldn't think that any of this information was foreign. It's all part of your business. These are all departments that are serving the same customer. They're working towards building the same set of products. Am I right? So that's where we want to go. And so how do we get there? Well, what we've thought about is to create a product that does just that. And we actually call it Computer. It's called Computer by DevRev. And so it's exactly that. It brings your most critical data, your most critical integrations to all your most important surfaces. Whether that's at the workstation, on the desktop, in a customer help support center, in a portal, on your website, perhaps on the mobile device, wherever you need it, Computer is there. And it's multiplayer. So it's not just there for you, it's there for your team and your organization, and it's also there for your customer. And there's some really hard problems behind the scenes that need to be solved to do this really, really well. First of all, you need to understand how to unify information. And unifying information is not just about being able to export data. That's not what it's about. It's not about taking data from here to there. That's not the problem to solve. This is about creating memory for agents and AI, for computer really. And this is about understanding how to bring information in a near real-time, bidirectional way. Because if it's bidirectional and near real-time, you can actually take actions on that information and actually have it reflect back in the systems where the information originated. So you can continue to coexist with the rest of your infrastructure, with the rest of your long tail of IT. It has to coexist. And for that reason alone, it needs to be bidirectional and near real time. And it can't just bring in the data. It's got to bring in all the metadata, right? It's got to understand the metadata so it knows what the other options are in the drop-down menu. And it needs to understand what the other radio button selection possibilities were. Because how else would you actually take action if you don't understand the field dependencies and the access provisions and the selection criteria and the variables at bay? So that's where you want to be. You want to be in a place where you can bidirectionally sync information and understand the schema and the access provisions so that you can respect all of that as you create a system that can search, give you answers, and of course take action on that as well. And of course when you bring it into memory, memory is going to have to handle both long-term and short-term context. It's got to be able to give you the most fast, accurate, and hyper-personalized answers. That's the only way to create a personal computer. And of course, you can't just do that by mimicking the data as it exists in these disparate systems. You need to understand how to connect data between the work that you do, your persona, the customers you serve, and the product you create. And so this information, these inner relationships need to be understood deeply. And of course, if you're going to do all that, you're going to need a series of foundational services on top of it. These are simple but powerful foundational services. You got to be able to search. And of course, what we know is that as we have gone deeper in search, it's a deep problem. You got to be able to do it at scale. You need to understand not just the syntax, the keywords, but the semantics. And you got to enrich this information. It's got to be able to understand the deep annotations, the links between work and opportunities and customers and entities and identities. It's got to understand that really, really well. And it's got to be fast at the scale of GPUs. So that's where we want to be. And of course, it has to be able to contextualize all the answers based on who you are. So you're not just giving the same information to everybody. It's got to be unique and personalized. And of course, it's got to have a data layer that's well suited to agentic AI. Agentic AI can't be built effectively on top of the data layer that we use to build client-server architectures or to build traditional client or cloud systems. It has to be a data layer that is native to conversational as much as it is a more conventional surface. And so SQL, what's old is new again. SQL is something that's grounded in facts. It's easy to advocate for. It's grounded in facts, so you can actually audit it, you can trace it, you can acknowledge it, you can permit it, and so you can conversationally access your information, and you know that the answer that you got was based on real facts because you have the understanding of the SQL that was working behind the scenes to actually provide that information. And you can then take that and in a more traditional way access it to create a graph or a dashboard or to share that information with somebody else who can do more intelligence on top of it. And so this is the most universal way for you to communicate with your information in traditional ways, but also in more conversational ways. So that's what the future looks like. It's not abandoning SQL, it's actually embracing it as a unified data layer. And of course, you also have to say yes to not just the data in memory, but the data outside of memory, right? So just like computers had access to the internet, so do these agentic computers. These computers have access via MCP. So you can actually access tools from around the world and have plans that reflect not just the information inside your memory, but all the information outside it as well. So this is what a modern computer looks like. It's built on all of these engines. The powerful engine of search that is both syntactic and semantic and powered by LLMs, but also SQL, the ability to ground facts, but be conversational as much as you are conventional. Dashboards and conversational at the same time. Of course, MCP as well. And that's just on the access for searches and answers. But to take actions, you need to be able to build agents and upskill agents because we're not going to be able to create thousands and hundreds of agents. Who's going to name them and who's going to address them? It's too difficult. You got to have a thoughtful mechanism to actually upskill these agents. And these agents cannot be put in everybody's hands to go create and upskill agents for the rest of the company. That's not going to work. You have to allow for citizen development. That means the ability for people to actually upskill an agent, perhaps just for themselves, or perhaps for their team, maybe the department, and just maybe for the entire organization. But it has to work within these scopes. You have to allow for skills and agents to manifest at the personal level so that people can have autonomy to create the type of automations they need for themselves, perhaps for their teams, and then maybe for their companies as well. And of course, the same reflects back into the enterprise. You can't have the same agents actually advocating across your customers for everybody. It could be different and unique for every brand, for every region, for every channel. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And so you need to be able to not only upskill agents and do this in a way that's scalable, one that allows you to create skills or maybe borrow them from a marketplace, or maybe create them and define them in a no-code way, but also to deploy them in really responsible ways at the brand, at the region, at the channel level, or at the team level, or personally, perhaps. And so that's what we're looking for. And of course, putting it all together, computer has to be able to answer questions by accessing all of this information. So you're able to answer questions like the one over here, and it's able to rattle through all of these tools you use, whether it's a Jira or a Notion, it doesn't matter. It's able to access that information, provide an answer that's fully cited, so you can continue with your work. And of course, it not only synthesizes information, but it's got to be able to do some reasoning on top of it. And so not only do you want it to synthesize information, but you want it to actually create a plan and to reason about the information, so you actually get an opinion, one that leverages the innate ability for frontier models to cluster and synthesize, prioritize, and classify information. That's super important as well. So here you can see that not only are we getting an answer that's grounded in the information across our enterprise, but it actually gives you some opinions, of course, again, grounded in facts that are fully cited. And of course, you could follow up those questions with real questions like, what are the action items? And it'll actually tell you. And of course, not only are you able to unify information, not only are you able to use planning and synthesis to get reasonable responses, you can actually take actions. So in this particular case, not only am I asking questions, I'm actually asking for a meeting to be scheduled. And this is the real sort of synthesis of where this is going, right? You're going to have the ability to unify your information, have a teammate that can actually maybe help you reason about what needs to happen. And if you believe it, if you agree or disagree, you can ask follow-up questions with the same level of context, and finally take action to maybe create work, create opportunities, or perhaps schedule work, what have you. So these are sort of some of the examples, and just putting it all together, ultimately it has to help you work more productively, faster than ever before. And so that's where we were headed. We have to be able to ask questions like, what is our travel policy? And not only are we expecting an answer that is grounded in the information that exists, it is the exact information that makes sense for who I am in the department that I belong to, so on and so forth. And I can ask follow-up questions and say, what about this other region? Not for myself, but I want to know what the travel policy looks like in that other region. And it'll actually tell you, because it understands that that's not the region that's native to you. And these are the kinds of experiences that we will come to expect from these modern computers. So just to kind of recap, again, these are not systems that are going to work at the boundaries of departments. I mean, they may help you in your departments, but they have to be able to go beyond those departments to say, you know what, I'm not just a computer for your support team. I'm a computer that also works equally well for the people that are building the software, people who are working closely with the customers, and people who are creating deep insights so that we understand where to go next. It has to work for everybody. It cannot create false boundaries between agents and microservices or applications. It has to coexist with all of that. So just to keep it really simple, a little bit, you can find us at booth 1204. So if you're excited and don't know where to go next, 1204, booth 1204, near Theater 2 is where we're located. Our founders, Dhirashpande Manoj, previously of Nutanix fame, left in 2020 to start this company. So we've got a forward deployed team, Applied AI, help you with this journey. And of course, we do a lot of workshops, and DevRevU helps you with understanding how to embrace this world as we make this transition from SaaS 1.0 to SaaS 2.0. Beyond that, a little bit about customers. We've got hundreds of customers. We've got partners. You see some of those logos. I'm sure you recognize those. And of course, fully compliant, GDPR ready, lots of money raised, so on and so forth. Thank you so much for your time.